Far in the past, clothing has been a scarce need, a means for survival, or even a luxury. Today, clothing has become more abundant and extravagant as it has evolved into a part of a larger concept, fashion. Fashion is a popular form of self-expression consisting of clothing, footwear, lifestyle, accessories, makeup, hairstyle, and more. Although the thriving of civilizations has allowed such necessities like clothes to morph into a leisure, it greatly hurts our environment. We have to ask ourselves, is wearing a new, trendy item every day slowly destroying the planet? In order to see how fashion has affected the environment, we need to take a look at the fashion timeline. Fashion in the Roman era, 500 BC to 323 AD. At this time, clothing was used as a way to represent one's social status or wealth. The clothes were also simple and handmade, which is much more eco-friendly than the methods used to produce clothes today. At this time, women wore a shawl and a long dress, while men wore a draped cloth over a tunic. Fashion in the Middle Ages, 400 to 1200 AD. In this time, belts are added to the outfits of the Roman era. Colored clothes were also used to denote financial status, so dyes began to be used a lot more. Like in the Roman era, clothing in the Middle Ages was still handmade, but a little more elaborate. Fashion in the Renaissance period, 1350 to 1520. In this period, aristocrats became highly interested in fashion. As a result, a lot of money was spent on clothes and more were bought, resulting in more waste. At this time, clothing also reflected the social standing of the wearer based on its color and style. Wealthy men were often found wearing a dress shirt, a close-fitting jacket, and often poofy knee-length trousers. Meanwhile, a woman would be found wearing a gown with a tight bodice and a full skirt. Fashion during the period between the 1600s and the 1900s. During this time, a major development occurred. This development was the Industrial Revolution in Great Britain, which happened from 1760 to 1840. With the Industrial Revolution, machines began to take over production and tailoring, which enabled speedy and less labor-intensive manufacturing of garments. This in turn made goods cheaper. Due to all the industries and machines, heavy industrial pollution began. Also, at this time, clothes went from culturally representative to personality-based, so there wasn't one distinct style that somebody would pursue. Fashion in the 1910s. In the early 1900s, fashion magazine production began. This resulted in more paper waste. At this time, people were reaping the effects of World War I. The war had a great effect on fashion, so people began dressing more minimally in order to cut costs. Fashion in the 1920s. During this period, an androgynous style of dressing became popular. People began to prefer a more simple dressing style, and so a sporty, flat-chested look gained popularity as well. Fashion in the 1940s. After World War II, a booming consumer society with the common man at the center stage emerged, changing fashion. Mass manufacturing gained popularity along with ready-to-wear clothes. This meant more clothes going to waste and faster depletion of resources, as well as pollution. The discovery of nylon also led to cheaper clothes during this time. Handmade clothes became expensive and unaffordable. Fashion in the 1950s. High disposable income, along with a booming economy, meant that young people invested more in fashion than ever before, and in great numbers. The more people that were interested in clothes meant the more environmental damage that would occur. The ready-to-wear mass market found favor, and brands like Marks & Spencer's emerged. Fashion in the 1960s through the 1980s. At this time, there wasn't a big change in terms of the impact fashion had on the environment, but there were a lot of differing styles. In the 60s, the style was bright colors and patterns. In the 70s, the punk look, which involved ripped t-shirts, chains, and weird hairdos, was popular, as well as the hippie look, which incorporated flared trousers. In the 80s, fitness was big, and so a lot of fitness clothing was worn. Fashion in the 1990s. In this period, fashion shows gained immense popularity. Globalization led to international influences in fashion and the emergence of cross-cultural styles. Over 45 styles of dressing emerged. Fashion in the 2000s. During this time, an important element in style was comfort, and so the streetwear style emerged. Also, there was diverse fashion and many options. Fast fashion began gaining popularity. Also, online selling platforms and shops prospered as more and more mobile-obsessed consumers emerged. Now that we know how fashion has evolved over time, so what? What's the significance? Through looking at the timeline, it's apparent that typically, as fast fashion has evolved, the resulting environmental damage from this industry has seen an increase. It is seen that as time progressed, the fashion industry went from being simplistic to extravagant, to consisting of more variety, to producing larger quantity of goods, and to the addition of makeup, shoes, accessories, and more into a part of fashion. Now, let's discuss why fashion has such a large environmental impact today. Fashion is the cause for 20% of global wastewater. Global fashion uses over 90 million metric tons of clean water per year, and this amount is nearly half of what all Americans consume annually. Cotton, a material used in many clothes, is a very water-consuming crop. A single kilogram of cotton, which is enough to make a pair of jeans, can consume up to 10,000 liters of water. Cotton production pollutes the soil as it involves the use of insecticides and pesticides. The runoff from these cotton fields transports nutrients to various bodies of water, resulting in algal blooms or eutrophication. Also, the dyeing process for colored fabrics uses toxic chemicals, and therefore is the cause for over 17% of industrial water pollution.
There's this cute expression in China that you know the color in fashion next season by the color of the rivers in China.
The fashion industry requires a lot of wood pulp to manufacture various fabrics, which results in the cutting down of tens of millions of trees per year from already endangered forests, furthering deforestation. Examples of these fabrics are viscose and rayon, which were first made as a cheaper alternative to silk. Due to deforestation, biodiversity is endangered. The fashion industry is accountable for approximately 10% of the yearly human-sourced greenhouse gas emission. Over 1 million metric tons of CO2 is released yearly by the fashion industry. A common material used in fashion is polyester, a synthetic fiber, and the production of this material relies on the extraction of fossil fuels. The fashion industry also produces a lot of waste. Less than 1% of clothing is recycled. Lots of clothing is made out of polymers, which when worn, grow fragile and are not able to be recycled into new garments.
China's also tired of being a destination for textile recycling, another surprisingly big cause of pollution. This year, authorities banned the import of used fabrics and clothing, and that ban could make the global fashion industry even less environmentally friendly.
China is the largest source right now, by far, of recycled fabrics and recycled fibers. If China bans all the source material, then they can't be producing the recycled yarns and fabrics and fibers. So we are working with the U.S. government and others to prevent China from fully implementing the policy.
While clothes made from cotton and linen may degrade in weeks to months, synthetic fabrics can take up to 200 years to break down while producing methane, a powerful global warming greenhouse gas. When clothes made from synthetic materials made of plastic fibers, are washed, microplastics get shed into wastewater. Though a portion of the microplastics get removed at wastewater treatment plants, some still make their way into the soil through fertilizer for agriculture and therefore become a part of the food chain. Some microplastics also end up in water bodies and in the air.
It turns out microfibers are just about everywhere in the world. I mean, they're in the air, they're in the soil, they're probably in all of us because they're in our seafood, they're in our water. They've even found them in the deepest part of the ocean, 7 miles down, a place called the Mariana Trench. And they found little critters down there that had microfiber in their digestive system. So if they've managed to get that far down, that kind of means they've got to be everywhere.
It's apparent that the fashion industry has a huge negative effect on the environment, though there are some solutions that can help to reduce this impact. Anybody can make a small change to help reduce the environmental damage caused by the fashion industry by doing small things like shopping from sustainable brands and also donating clothes. But there's an even larger solution to the problem, which is implementing a circular economy.
Beyond recycling, there's another idea that's catching on with some labels: the circular economy. Ellen MacArthur, who runs a foundation in the UK, has been pushing this solution. She believes the fashion industry needs a drastic redesign, so it doesn't even create waste in the first place.
A vast majority of textiles that are produced end up incinerated or burned. We lose about $500 billion worth of value every year because clothing is hardly worn. The majority of what is made is turned into a product, it gets used, and then at the end of its life it gets thrown away. Basically, if you design an economy where there's no waste, it has to be circular. It has to feed back into the system so the product would stay out there and used for as long as possible. It would then be designed so the materials can be recovered or someone else could use it, and then it would feed back into that economy as the raw materials.
While it may never be possible to get rid of all the negative effects of the fashion industry, consumers should realize how much power they hold in their hands. Customers can control how much their shopping tarnishes the earth when choosing how much to purchase, where to purchase from, and how to properly handle the items that they buy. By being more environmentally aware when indulging in a fashionable purchase, people can hope to mitigate some of the harms of the fashion industry and preserve our Earth's health.